We talk about the LA Kings season to this point and more with LA Kings insider Zach Dooley on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and we are also on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network, also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 17 years, and of course, a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Well, the LA Kings had another day of practice to try and fine-tune some things with only one game on the schedule this week, and so we have some extra time to talk about the Kings season thus far as we approach December. And to join us in that is the manager of editorial content of the LA Kings, better known to all of us as the LA Kings insider, and that would be, of course, Zach Dooley. Hey, Zach, how are you?
Eddie, what's up, man? Happy to come back on the show.
Great to have you back. Only one game this week. Does that lighten your load a little bit, getting some Christmas shopping in or anything at this point?
This is definitely the quietest time in the schedule for sure, right? Month of November, 5 breaks of 3 or more days between games, which is absurd in this league. At this time last year, the Kings had played 6 more games than they have this year. So it's a very different schedule. Enjoying it right now because over the next 2-3 months, we will not be enjoying it.
Well, well, I'll be enjoying having the content to talk about.
You're going to enjoy the game. There's going to be a lot of them.
Yeah. I can't believe we haven't had you on since just before the start of the season. But there have certainly been some surprises so far this season for the LA Kings. Very pleasant surprises. I thought we'd start with one of the things we talked about, I'm sure, the last time we spoke going into the season, and that was the Kings' penalty kill being a priority. It needed to improve. Todd McClellan seemed confident in his exit interviews after last season that they could improve it and that the people to improve it were in the room, the coaches and the players. And after last night's action, I don't know if people saw this, but the LA Kings right now are the number one penalty kill team in the NHL, 89.4%. Give all credit to Todd McClellan and his staff and, of course, the players for executing it. But what a turnaround for the Kings PK. I
mean, absolutely immense, right? If you look at that postseason series against the Oilers, they were below 50% on the penalty kill. And now that unit is almost at 90%. So it's been a remarkable turnaround for sure. A new system that was implemented, focusing on different areas, a little bit different reads, that kind of thing. I think you're seeing the results of that on the ice. The personnel, while you have guys like Trevor Lewis who have been really nice adds, you have a full season of Gavrikov, Englund kills penalties. The personnel is largely the same, right? You're seeing same types of players who were there in that series against the Oilers, minus Lewis, but they're getting great goaltending on the penalty kill. Cam Talbot, one of the best goalies in the league while shorthanded in terms of save percentage. And the Kings are executing and buying into that system effectively. They're blocking shots. They're aggressive when they need to be. On pretty much every count, it's been so much better, and it's been awesome because it was a clear focal point.
Yeah, and in addition to it being effective, which is ultimately the bottom line, I think just the energy, and I know you have to expend a lot of energy killing penalties, but the energy they kind of get out of it as well, being aggressive, being, on the boards hard, anytime there's a pass that goes around, jumping on that player that's receiving the pass, I think it also lends itself to the style and the energy you want from your team as well.
I think 100%. And you have guys like Lizotte and Lewis, first guys over the boards on the PK when Lizotte's healthy. Those guys embrace that PK. They started off with the right mentality. They bring a lot of energy and a lot of commitment there. I think that trickles throughout the lineup. And then when you kill the penalty, it's giving the team energy. They're going out and they're turning it around. They're producing offensive momentum if they don't score shorthanded because they've got a few of those. So pretty much on all fronts, the energy has been really good. The system execution has been really good. And I don't think any of us could have predicted it would be this good, right? Coming off of how it was over the last couple of years, it wasn't good enough. It was one of the weaker points of this team. Now you could argue it's been the biggest strength, and that's been really exciting.
And another surprise, I think you could make some of the same points with goaltender Cam Talbot. I know there were plenty of national pundits saying the big concern for the Kings is in net. I actually thought Cam Talbot could be a very solid goalie for the Kings, but to see him where he is at this point, I have to say is a surprise. You'd even have to say, and I know it's early, but if you're looking at Vezina Trophy consideration at this point, his name has to be in there. He's third in the NHL in goals against average, 2.02. Second in the NHL in save percentage at 931, tied for second in the NHL in wins at 10. Those are all your major categories. I thought he could be solid, but again, I didn't quite see this coming from Cam Talbot.
I mean, his track record is solid, right? He's been excellent, but his track record is solid. I think people looked at last year for him as the current reality. But what they failed to mention is that he got injured during training camp, didn't get up to speed right off the start, got injured twice more early and throughout the season. And he never established his footing with a new team in Ottawa, a young team, a team that gave up some stuff defensively. He never got going. But if you look at those 3 years in Minnesota, he was like the 10th best goalie in the league by save percentage. Like, he was very good in those years. He was solid. But people just looked at last year and said, oh, the Kings, they're investing less in goaltending than any other team in the league. It's going to be bad. But Talbot's been not just solid, but he's been really, really strong. He's a good fit for Todd McClellan's system. He played behind Todd's system in Edmonton for a few years. He knows the reads that a goaltender should make there. He's been aggressive. He's been really good on the PK. They say your goalie is your best penalty killer. It's a cliche, but he's been really good in penalty kill situations. Good game management, gets whistles when he needs to. So I think he's been everything the Kings could have wanted and more. And for a cap hit of $1 million plus $1 million bonus, I don't think you could get much better goaltending than what they've gotten from Talbot.
Quinton Byfield, a surprise to some. Others are enjoying the "I told you so" at this point, and saying be patient. But Q has been so much fun to watch so far this year. Tied for second on the team in assists with 12, fifth on the team in points with 16. He just looks so much more confident. The pass to Kopitar in that Arizona game, showing the elite vision and skill, was, I mean, it's so exciting to see. And I thought Kopitar's reaction was amazing. Your thoughts on what we've seen from Quinton Byfield so far?
So last year, we saw a step forward from him, right? When he moved to the wing, he brought a lot of things, puck retrievals, forechecking, that kind of stuff. But he wasn't making the plays that you wanted to see from him. This year, he's still doing that other stuff, but he's been a play-driving, dominant player in the offensive zone. He's almost a point-per-game guy. And that line is among the best in the NHL. Like, that's a true number one line, because now at LW1, you have Quinton Byfield, who is producing and playing like an LW1. Like, he's a big, fast guy. There are very few in the NHL that are 6'5" and skate the way that he does. He's an absolute puck hound when he gets it on the forecheck. He wins pucks back left and right. But now he's not just getting it back and hoping that Kempe or Kopitar make a play. He's getting it back and he's making the play himself. That pass to Kopi was a perfect example, right? He won the puck back earlier in that shift, takes it with a power move to his backhand, and then makes the play through traffic to Kopitar at the back post. So I think he's taken several steps forward this year. And it's so easy to forget how young Quinton Byfield is, right? You see these articles saying like late bloomer. Like, he's not a late bloomer. He's still very early in his development curve. Adrian Kempe may be a late bloomer. He didn't break out till he was 26, 27. You've got Byfield at 21. He's developing at the rate that I think that the Kings were hopeful that he would. And we're starting to reap the benefits of seeing his process develop, because he's been really, really good.
And one other surprise for me, Andreas Englund. The only thing I knew about him coming into the season was that he had a hit on Alex Turcotte in a playoff game in the AHL that hurt Turcotte. I had Tobias Bjork penciled in on that third pairing on the left side. Englund, though, has obviously given the Kings that physical element that a lot of fans were hoping that they could get from a player, but he's been so responsible defensively. I don't really remember a single time where he did something in his own end that I was like, oh no, you can't do that. I mean, he's reliable. He's certainly not flashy, and he's doing the basic things, but still, to have him be as reliable as he's been and providing that extra element, I got to believe the Kings are just thrilled with what he's been able to give him so far.
Yeah, I think so for sure. The coaches have called him the shepherd of the group for the way that he plays the game. Like, he's obviously very willing to stand up for teammates, willing to step in and drop the gloves, but he's about a lot more than that, because if you're a defenseman or a forward whose main contribution is fighting, you might not have a place in today's NHL, but he's physical during the game. He's big at hitting, when he doesn't have the puck to win it back. He's been very solid defensively. He can move the puck, though, as well. He's not just a big body. He can make the outlet pass. He can join the rush. He can keep plays alive offensively. So he brings all those elements. And I think that the Kings felt like they had their LD3 when they signed him. They had him penciled in for that spot when they signed him. But maybe we didn't all know exactly how good he was. I think, though, we're seeing this is a pretty solid, reliable NHL defenseman who gets a reputation because he's willing to fight. But I think we're seeing that he's got a lot more to his game than just the fisticuffs. And he's formed a really effective duo with Jordan Spence.
All right, we've talked about some of the surprises. Up next, we'll get into some of the reasons why the Kings are doing so well at this point. We'll do that more with LA Kings insider Zach Dooley here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, well, I'll let you know that you should not have to worry when you're buying tickets for your next big event. I don't, because I use Gametime, the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. I went on vacation recently to New York, bought tickets through Gametime to see a Rangers-Hurricanes game at Madison Square Garden. It was super easy to do, got a great deal, and you can too. The app, again, easy to navigate. They've got killer last-minute deals, all in prices, and the best prices guaranteed. Gametime, the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. Love how you can view your seats before you buy them. You know exactly what you're going to expect when you get there. And Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. All in prices show you the total up front, so you know exactly what you're getting. No hidden fees. Buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps of the app. Just download the Gametime app and create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDONNHL, for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And all great athletes have one thing in common. They take care of their bodies, and a huge part of that starts with optimizing whole body health. A lot of them also drink AG1 with every daily serving. You're setting up your success with 75 high-quality ingredients that give you key daily nutrients and support energy, focus, strength, and clarity. It's a micro habit that delivers macro benefits and helps everybody take great care of their health every day. You just mix 1 small scoop in a cup of water, drink it first thing each morning, and you're done. Also costs less than $3 a day. Pretty good if you ask me. It is a really effective daily habit with high-quality sourced ingredients. Win-win. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/NHL network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL network. All right, we have more with the LA Kings insider Zach Dooley. And when you look at some of the reasons for the Kings' success so far, I think something that's right at the top is the depth scoring. 11 players with at least 4 goals, 9 players with at least 10 points. Even when there's been some tweaks in the lineup, which I want to talk to you about, the production is still there from all 4 lines this season.
It's 100%, right? And you don't get that without a lot of production coming from your 4th line. And you talk about surprises. I mean, I don't think any of us had Grundstrom, Lizotte, Lewis being as productive offensively as they've been, and they've been extremely productive. So that's been really exciting. And I think that they've gotten that steady production throughout the lineup to the point of where if there's a line that's off, it's not sinking the team. Like if you look at games over the last couple of years, Kopi's line was off or Deneau's line was off. The Kings might not be going the way that they need to, but now you have Dubois' line. Now you have Lizotte's line. Those lines can make up the difference if there's an off night from a Kopitar line or a Deneau line. So it's made this team 4 lines deep. It's made the Kings a lot less reliant, I think, on matchups than they've been in years past. They're trusting of all 4 lines against different players on the ice, whereas maybe last year, the year before, they'd be very reliant on matchups. So I think it's really been productive offensively for sure, but it's also allowed them to be a little bit more flexible with when they roll lines out. I think that's kept guys fresher, and I think it's made everybody more productive.
And when you think about tweaks to a lineup, I guess generally speaking, you think of maybe a player being promoted or a player being demoted because of playing well or not playing well. But I don't really get the feel of that. And you can agree or disagree, but we've seen some tweaks to the lineup. Kevin Fiala moving to the Deneau line, Carl Grundstrom going to the Dubois line, Alex Laferriere and Arthur Kaliyev being moved a bit. And then the injury to Blake Lizotte has played into that a bit as well. But it just feels like, Todd McClellan is like, I'm just going to tinker a little bit here and see if we can't get a little different chemistry and maybe just improve things a bit. I don't know that anyone has played, poorly where you're like, oh, we got to drop him down. And if you do, you're like, what are we going to drop him down the 4th line? The 4th line's playing great. So it's just, kind of interesting, the moves we've seen. I think they're just kind of tweaks more than anything.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think the biggest one, was obviously splitting up Dubois and Fiala. I think there was a lot of hope that those guys would work, right? Because it was two big players, two very skilled players, and you had consistency on the other three lines to where it was like, if these guys do click, we've got something here. And there were some spurts, but it didn't quite go, I think, as everybody hoped. So the Kings, even though they were winning games, despite that line not clicking as they would have liked, they said, okay, let's try something different. They put Fiala with Danault and Moore, and we've seen how productive he's been since he's moved with those guys. And I think we've seen what kind of player Dubois can be as a play-driving center who's creating space for guys around him when he plays with two guys who are very straight-line players in Laferriere and Grundstrom. So I think we're seeing kind of the best of both of those guys now that they've been moved apart. Obviously, it would have been great had they been able to click really well together, because then you keep the Danault line together. When Arvidsson was healthy, you keep Kopitar's line together, and you have this fourth line that's been so good. But it didn't work as they wanted it to, and they weren't afraid to make those small moves to try to make everybody better. And I think they've kind of found a nice mix right now of what their best combinations are without Lizotte in the lineup. And when he comes back, obviously they might have to tweak it to get that fourth line back together. But recently, I think they've been exactly what you said. They've been tweaks, not promotions or demotions. And I think that everyone has kind of handled it in the right way.
I do want to get your thoughts on Pierre-Luc Dubois. Obviously, signs the big deal, comes in as the big player, gets the spotlight. I think some fans are a bit disappointed with his production, and he's not currently, as far as his projection for the season, up to his season that he had a year ago. That said, do you feel like he's given the Kings what they've wanted and having that strong presence down the middle and three centers that can really carry the play?
I think the Kings have four centers who can carry the play when Lizotte's in, for
Fair
sure.
point, yes.
But yeah, I think that he's getting there, right? The production hasn't been, I don't think, to the level that we know he's capable of. But it does take some time, right? You saw with Fiala last year. You've seen it in the first half of Danault's first year, too. Danault's production his first year wasn't at that level. Neither was Fiala's. So it does take some time for these guys to adjust to a new system, a new way of playing, new teammates, new structure, new coaches, all that kind of stuff. I think that over these last 5-6 games, we've really seen a lot more from Dubois. It just didn't quite click between him and Fiala, and I think both players have been a lot better when they've been split up. I think you've seen Dubois play with first Kaliev, now Laferriere, and Grundstrom on the other wing, and these guys are clicking pretty well. They're just different styles of players, and I think we're seeing Dubois gain the offensive zone with possession a lot more than we did before. It's leading to offensive opportunities, even if they're not quite going in. So I think the points will come. He's a big-bodied guy. We've seen him make really nice plays in small spaces. And I think as the production begins to go, it's almost a positive right now because the Kings are 13-3-3, and they haven't had that super high level of production from Dubois. So as some of these other areas that are maybe a little bit unsustainable come down, you have this guy who's a pretty consistent 60-plus point player who's going to get going. So once he does, you have certain areas like him who are going to pick up some of that slack. And I think that's been pretty exciting is he's picking things up, but still has room to grow.
I have to mention Andrei Kopitar. It kind of feels in a way, with all these milestones that he's coming up on and he's getting, in some sense, it feels like, that old veteran who's been around a long time and he's eclipsing some of these numbers. But I guess it is that in a sense, but Kopi is still killing it. He is still an engine that drives this team, being so productive, second on the team in points with 19, second on the team in goals with 10. This isn't a guy who's, kind of hanging on at the end of his career based on what he's meant to an organization. This is a guy who is still playing at a very high level.
Yeah, he's still driving the play, right? Entering last game before Trevor Moore scored twice against Montreal, he was leading the team in goals, and that's just what he's brought. And I think you're now seeing him with two wingers who are dynamic and can make plays themselves. And it's not just on Kopi anymore, whereas before maybe it was a little more reliant on him before Kempe established himself when he was playing with different guys. Now you have three dynamic players on that line. And Kopitar is ageless, right? Like he doesn't seem to get any older, doesn't seem to get any less effective. He's still killing penalties. He's still defensively responsible. He can still shut down opposition's players while still being a 70, 80-point guy like he is every year. So he is that good. Like he just doesn't seem to slow down in any way. And that's been great to see. He's scoring at a very high rate, already at 10 goals, and we're not even 20 games into the year. So he's going to be in there for his 20, 30 goals like he always is. The assists are coming. The play in all three zones is still there. Enjoy him while you can, right? Because he has not dropped off a bit from what I've seen.
We'll get an update on what the Kings have been doing at practice with these extra couple of days of practice, maybe an injury report as well, and the Kings on the verge of some history potentially. We'll talk about that all and more here coming up with the Kings Insider Zach Dooley on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That is a $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now. And as much as we love betting on the NFL, of course, you can bet on the NHL too. You could place a bet on the Kings to pick up a win over the Washington Capitals coming up on Wednesday. The over-under is 6.5. You could bet whether it's going to be more or less. I just use the FanDuel app, which is very easy to use. A wide range of betting options there. Point spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/locked on and bet on the NHL or the NFL this season. Again, FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. And speaking of the LA Kings coming up, they will take on the Washington Capitals Wednesday night, 7:30 Pacific time. Catch every moment of the hometown broadcast of your LA Kings with Sirius XM on the SXM app. Just search for LA Kings. A couple more questions for the Kings insider, Zach Dooley. Zach, the Kings are still undefeated on the road as we approach December. They are one win away from tying the NHL record for consecutive road wins to start a season. Next road game a week from today in Columbus. Are the players talking about this at all?
They're not talking about the record. I think they're just trying to approach it game by game. I mean, they certainly get asked like, hey, why are you winning so much on the road? And I think there's a variety of different answers. I think it's something that probably we're talking about more than they are, but it's not escaped them either that this team has been really, really successful on the road. 9-0-0, right? You're going to get asked about it. So I don't think they're focused on a record per se, but they're certainly getting asked, hey, why are you winning so much on the road?
Well, you're out there at practice. I did want to ask you what the Kings have been working on. We have not mentioned the power play, which hasn't been quite as good as it has been last year. I know that that's something they have worked on recently. Anything that you've seen with these extra days of practice that Todd McCullough has either said they want to work on or you've seen them been working on here?
Yeah, we've definitely seen power play both today and yesterday. And speaking with a couple of the guys and with Todd, like this is the time to do it because when you get into December, when you get into January, these 2-3 day stretches of practice days are not there. They don't exist. So this work's going to have to be done with video review and that kind of thing. You have to talk about it, but you can't go on the ice and work on it. So right now, the power play overall hasn't quite clicked as well as it has last year, but it's been okay. But this is the time to dive into those more specific parts of the power play to work on it and make it better because they have the time to do it. So we've definitely seen a lot of power play work here over the last couple of days. Both full unit and certain pieces kind of working separately. So it's a big focal point for sure. Definitely some room for improvement on the power play. Still getting used to the fact that it's 4 right shot forwards compared to 4 left shots compared to 3 left and a right shot last year. It's a work in progress. I think we're seeing some really good signs from that unit with the hopes as they get into kind of the second half of the year that it's going to start to click.
And speaking of things getting ironed out a bit in practice, I know that Phoenix Copley has talked about how valuable that's been for him working with Mike Buckley, the goalie coach, in practice to kind of tweak some things. And we've seen the results here in the last couple of games, 1 goal allowed in 2 games and getting the shutout in his last game. So, that practice time can be valuable to players, can it?
100%. And that speaks to a guy like Phoenix, right? Because he wasn't getting the starts, especially not at the rate that he had them last year. Last year, he was going pretty much every other day, right? When he came in, he got the net pretty early and never really gave it back until the split at the deadline with Korpisalo. But he's taken these practices very seriously, worked on a few specific elements of his game that he felt were a little bit inconsistent. And we've really seen the results here over the last couple of games. And I found it really interesting that Copley got pulled the first game in Arizona. And then from that point on, the Kings targeted the second game in Arizona as the game they wanted him to start specifically. So there are a lot of people wondering, well, why not Talbot in that game? Because he had won the previous 2, played very well. There was a day off before. It set up for Talbot to go, but the Kings turned to Copley in that game to give him that like revenge redemption type game, if they will. They didn't feel it was his fault when he got pulled. They felt the team kind of let him down, but he played excellently in that win over the Coyotes, turned it around with the shutout against the Canadiens this weekend. So he's kind of taking the situation really well. And the Kings are going to need him because come December, come January, the games are too fast and too close together that the Kings can't ride one guy. They're going to need a lot closer to an every other game type situation at times. So good for Copley to get going. And it's going to be good for the Kings because they're going to need him for sure over these next few months.
One of the reasons the Kings have done so well, and Victor Arvidsson aside, they've been relatively healthy. But I do want to ask you about a couple of injury updates if you have it. Blake Lizotte, I believe it's 3 games in a row now he's missed with the undisclosed injury. Any update on him?
He is skating on his own. Will not play tomorrow against the Capitals, but we'll see. Maybe he's going to be back for the weekend. Unclear, but he is skating on his own. Hasn't rejoined the group just yet. But we're seeing him out, kind of on his own, doing some injury ice. So that's been really exciting. Good to see him back on the ice and around the rink because he's such an important part of this team, that energizer bunny type guy. So good to see him out there, and hopefully we see him back in action soon.
And we did have a scary incident a week ago in the AHL with the Ontario Reign. Tobias Bjork got hit into the boards, taken off on a stretcher into a hospital, but I believe everything is looking good for him at this point.
Yeah, I think I don't think it's quite as serious as maybe it was originally expected. Not expecting him to play today with Ontario, but another guy that maybe you could target for a return this coming weekend potentially. But it sounds like it wasn't quite as serious as the situation looked. Obviously, it looked pretty scary with how he was taken off the ice. But from what we've heard from Marco Sturm, head coach of the Reign, sounds like a pretty positive update on Toby.
Very good. Well, that is the LA Kings insider, Zach Dooley. You can follow him on Twitter at Dooley, DOOLEYLAK. Check out his fine work covering the LA Kings at LAKingsInsider.com. And if you go to the games, you see him up on the video every now and then doing some reports. Are you enjoying that part of your duties now?
Always love the FaceTime. It's been fun to be able to do it. I'm trying to expand my role a little bit, but good to kind of break some of those written storylines to a video form.
All right, very good. Well, we're looking forward to that and your continued fine work as the LA Kings insider. Zach, it's always a pleasure. Really appreciate you making some time for us today. Thank you so much, and we'll have you on in the near future.
Sounds good. Thanks, Eddie.
Thank you. All right, that is the LA Kings insider, Zach Dooley. And again, we very much appreciate his time today. As for you guys, the everydayers out there that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up tomorrow, we're going to take a deep dive into goalie Cam Talbot. This is something I was working on that I was going to use for our Thanksgiving Day episode that actually didn't happen. Looking kind of historically at a goalie his age, if he plays the number of games he's projected to, have there been similar goalies that have won Stanley Cups? And there is some good, positive historical evidence that maybe Cam Talbot can get the job done and get the Kings where they want to go. Of course, we'll also preview Wednesday night's game against the Washington Capitals. Coming up on Friday's show, we'll recap that game as well as having our usual Kings Feedback Friday as well. If you want to get an email in for that, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. Of course, you can always put your comments on the YouTube episodes if you're watching this. Don't forget to stay interactive with the show by following us on Twitter and Instagram. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thanks as always for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And as always, go Kings, go.